Verse number 60. When knowledge is spoken of as subjected to the ego, without considering its ultimate truth, even if that ultimate reality is spoken of in this way, for one who knows, knowledge does not become other. Commentary. Man has a heritage of knowledge which is presented through the expounding of various scientific truths. It can be seen applied in technology. Literature and the different forms of art also express it. It is within the various kinds of laws, such as the mathematical, logical, moral, natural, and social. This body of knowledge has a central place in each person's life, and yet, on the whole, it is impersonal and universal. When we relate this knowledge to truth, we think of truth as single. Truth has no limitation. We do not know the beginning or the entire scope of it. Those elements which limit anything, such as time and space, are all only constituent factors of it. We can have several kinds of attitudes towards truth: adoration, intellectual appreciation, a sense of practical utility, or even indifference. But our attitude, whatever it is, does not bring any change in the ultimate nature of truth, any more than any other constituent factor. Nonetheless, we are embodied beings. The body is equipped with senses and a mind. What is of great importance to each person is his experience, which is a reaction to what he imbibes as sensory data. The mind includes a rational intellectual function as well as an intuitive one. We really don't know what causes intuitive flashes and how they reveal certain aspects of truth, but they are undeniably present. Before our comprehension of any truth as such, all these things prevail upon us. Kant calls it the a priori synthesis. Before the operation of a logical analysis, there is a presentation of all the relevant factors, and the general consciousness synthesizes them into a coherent body of knowledge for us. This individual experience of consciousness can be viewed from two perspectives: from the side of the knowing center of awareness and from the side of the unknown, where various data are presented. Philosophers make a division of this into the self and the non-self. In reality, there is no such distinction. However, in order to understand our experience, we have to look at it from the point of view of what is intimately and immediately clear to us. What is most intimately known to us is the experiencing of the I consciousness. If you draw a circle around it, keeping I as the nucleus of knowledge, then what comes within that illuminated circle of consciousness is considered as knowledge belonging to that self or I consciousness. Upon recognition of it, you say, "This is my knowledge." When a person owns knowledge like that, consciously or unconsciously, you are thinking of it as being other than your own. This is true of your knowledge, someone else's knowledge, or the knowledge that is not known, the unknown. So essentially we bifurcate knowledge into mine and not mine. There is no justification for making a cleavage in universal truth. Truth can never be mine. It can never be yours. It is universal. But in the actual experiencing and advocacy of truth, we do make such a distinction. however unwarranted it may be. Even the greatest protagonists of the so-called highest truth, such as the propagandists of religion, claim to have an exclusive knowledge. They call it my religion or my faith. In such cases, there is a violation of the universality of truth. In the world of actual transactions, we have to reconcile with this inevitable limiting of knowledge. An embodied being has many limitations. One is that a person's sensory system cannot reach beyond a certain point in spatial extension and temporal recognition. Another is that our memory cannot go beyond the span of our own lifetime. It is true that we can incorporate the recorded experiences of others through a study of history, but these are of a secondary nature and do not come under the category of intimate experience. What is most clear to each person is the light that prevails around their own eye consciousness, and even this fades out at their own mental horizon. So the truth that is revealed to us is a very limited experience. In spite of all these limitations, man is always communicating with others. Without alienating his own personal experience, he is capable of expressing the truth as he sees it to another person, and under normal conditions, it is more or less understood by the other person. Although each one has to use the symbols of his own concepts for the expression of truth, it is as if there is a recognized currency of concepts that can be exchanged. When people exchange currency bills like dollars or rubles or yen, they are recognizing a common truth behind the transaction. Behind the money, at least until it was recently fictionalized, was the gold standard, which is the absolute as far as money is concerned. Similarly, truth is the gold standard of our interpersonal communication. This communication occurs not only between people, but also in different ways between all beings. To some extent, even a plant understands the love that is given to it. From all this we gather that ultimate truth is the totality to which we belong. It is not what we conceive. It is not what we ultimately or absolutely know. It is the total situation to which we belong, and the universality of it is not confined to living beings. Whatever is finds its ground, its stuff, its meaning, all within the total reality. Narayana Guru says here, in everyday life, most people do not recognize this universality. Most people can speak only from their own standpoint. This he considers as bringing knowledge under the monopoly of one's personal experience. Although in principle this contradicts the very nature of truth, there is no other way for an individual person to know truth, to experience it, to live it, and to express it. Thus there is a kind of transactional validity in owning truth and calling it mine. Does it affect truth? Not at all. Let me give you an example. Beyond the dateline, the sun appears first in the Fiji Islands. 2 hours afterwards, it appears in Sydney. Again, after 3 or 4 hours, it is seen rising in Singapore, and after another 2 in India. So the 6 o'clock of Fiji is not the same as the 6 o'clock of India. At the same moment, the inhabitants will be experiencing a beautiful dawn sun gently warming them, and a brutal midday sun beating down in a fury. Is it a different sun in each place? No. We recognize it is the same sun, but it cannot be seen in the same way at the same time by all the people. So individual experiences vary in respect to local conditions, and they have a functional truth that differs from absolute truth. But this doesn't affect the reality of the sun at all. It continues to be the same sun, no matter what people think. In just the same way, universal truth is unaffected by the partial experiencing of it by people. Of course, there are often wrangles between people when each holds out their personal experience as the sole truth with a bigoted, narrow conviction. The first thing to understand is the necessity of neutralizing in our minds the contradictions between varying private experiences of truth, realizing that there will always be different perspectives due to the individual approach we are bound to take. Then at least we will have no need to fight over truth. The second aspect of the verse is that there is only one knowledge, and that is the knowledge with which you know. Whatever you know belongs to the same knowledge that illuminates everything for everyone else. It is not necessary that you should always recognize it as such, since your recognition or non-recognition is not going to affect the validity of it. The corollary here is, for the practical purposes of living truth, there is a need to unify, coordinate, and correlate truth as belonging to one homogeneous whole. The physicist deals with many aspects of physical nature, but he has to reduce it all to one principle, such as a primal substance he may call matter. The biologist reduces everything to one principle of life, and then sees how it manifests in various ways, so that he can place each manifestation in its respective position. Our business is the totality of life, not just an aspect of it. So we should similarly be able to incorporate the unitive principle of a whole truth into our life interest, so that existence, understanding, and the evaluation of it can all be centralized. This is very important. Many of the cherished human values are to be generalized and abstracted at the same time that they are lived out as specific experiences. Love is one such generalization. Justice is another. Goodness, all moral virtues, these cannot be separate entities. They all belong to one and the same truth. Only when they can be incorporated into one truth can my justice be your justice, or my love be meaningful to you. Whenever this universality cannot be experienced, because of the private coloration that we put into it, people undergo great agony, such as when the authority's sense of justice is at odds with the populace, or one person's love does not appeal to the object of his love. The theoretical aspect of this verse may look bleak, removed from human life, outside of all our interests, but those who see the implications of it will be aware of how intimate a bearing it has on day-to-day experience. We stand divided in our opinions, and that is inevitable. But when you draw thick boundaries around your opinions and segregate the views of others as irrelevant and false, you are heading towards bigotry. This causes cleavage between man and man. You cast aspersions of a very derogatory kind, and thus bring total injustice to the evaluation of life situations. Emotional people have a natural aversion to reason, while those who are logically structured often have a distaste for sentiment. If two such people were to evaluate a situation, each would consider their model to be the highest, best, and most appealing, and the others meaningless, shadowy, and useless. They naturally lean towards their own preferences. They get into their own tiny compartments and say, "This is mine and that is yours." The various religions have incorporated such compartmentalization, and each has its own protagonists. The more enthusiastic they become in giving adoration to the truth as they comprehend it, the more they become angry with someone else holding another view. Until this other view is destroyed, they do not feel they are doing justice or giving their total loyalty to the kind of truth they adore. Someone else is to be removed from their neighborhood so that they can live in peace, and there comes bloodshed. This approach leads to such kind of ridiculous ideas. This particular verse is not to be treated as just a metaphysical abstraction. You should see how intimately it is related to your own peaceful life, to the joy of your own personal appreciations. There can be a more intimate relationship between things when you recognize the universality of truth and that there are many facets of it. When you see only one aspect and love or hate it, you need to remember that for sure there are many other angles of vision and many other possibilities. The highest truth cannot be articulated, because as soon as you articulate, you conceptualize. If you do not want to intellectualize it, you should sit in silence. If you open your mouth, you bring a concept. A concept is born of intellect. It is an intellectual appreciation of truth, and it is bound to be limited. Always behind that intellectual conceptualization, there is a person, an I, who is speaking. Since there can only be a transaction between two people, the person who listens also has the standpoint of an I. There are only two possibilities regarding the discussion of truth or philosophy. Either one should opt to live in silence and be satisfied with silence, or accept that the moment you speak it becomes intellectualized. To hate someone for being intellectual is an example of truth being monopolized, and of your tendency to monopolize everything. Why does it prick you when I say that? Why does it hurt when a personal reference is made? It hurts people when you narrow a view. On the other hand, when you go to a more universal appreciation, there is an elevation of experience. The important point here is that we are all intellectualizing, only to different depths. So don't wrap yourself in smug satisfaction and think it's only something that other people are doing. Instead, see how that same process is going on in yourself. Natarajaguru, in his elucidation of this verse, asks us to consider two limiting points: the most transcendental aspect of truth and the most immanent. The immanent is where it pricks you, where it stimulates you, where it is your flesh, where it incarnates. The transcendent is where your ideas fade out, your individuation cannot continue, where you merge with the universal. Looking at this as the vertical parameter, when truth comes closer and closer to the side of the individual, the physical and the personal, it gains the richness of catering to your instinctive life. When it is removed farther into the transcendental, it loses the blemish of all personal stains, but the intimacy that comes through the sensory and mental faculties fades out. At the same time, you gain a spiritual glorification of truth, which is another kind of experience. And the free translation of verse number 60 is as follows. Even when a person oblivious of the absolute status of knowledge speaks of it as his or her private experience, knowledge does not become either differentiated from the truth of the knower or alienated from the supreme word that illuminates all minds.